Have you ever received a gift that made your blood run cold? Not because it was thoughtless or cheap, but because something deep in your gut told you it was wrong, dangerous even. That's exactly what happened to me last Tuesday, when a beautifully wrapped bottle of premium whiskey arrived at my doorstep with a card that simply read, "For the best mother-in-law ever. Love, Sarah." Sarah is my daughter-in-law, and that bottle nearly destroyed 2 families before I even understood what I was holding. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because the devil, as they say, lives in the details. And in this case, those details almost cost someone their life. My name is Margaret, and I've been a widow for 8 years now. My son David married Sarah 3 years ago, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. She was charming, well-educated, came from a good family, the kind of woman any mother would be proud to call her daughter-in-law. But there was always something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Small things. The way she'd smile when she thought no one was looking. How she'd change the subject whenever I asked about her childhood. Little moments that made me feel like I was watching a performance rather than getting to know a person. Still, David was happy. That's all that mattered to me. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning in late October. I remember the exact date because it was the anniversary of my husband's death, and I'd been having one of those melancholy days where every shadow seems deeper and every sound feels too loud. The doorbell rang just as I was finishing my second cup of coffee, and there stood a delivery driver holding a box wrapped in expensive paper with a burgundy ribbon. No return address, no delivery confirmation required. Just my name, written in elegant script, across a cream-colored envelope taped to the top. I signed for it, thanked the driver, and carried it inside. The box was heavier than I expected, and something inside shifted when I moved it. Glass, definitely. But what kind of glass? I opened the envelope first. The card was thick, expensive stock. The kind you buy at boutique stationery stores, not the grocery checkout line. And there, in Sarah's distinctive handwriting, were those words that should have made me smile, but instead made something twist in my stomach. For the best mother-in-law ever. Love, Sarah. It was the love that bothered me. Sarah had never once told me she loved me. Not when she married my son. Not on my birthday. Not during family dinners when David would say it freely and often. She was always polite, always proper, but never warm, never loving. So why now? I unwrapped the box with careful fingers, the way you handle something that might bite back. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a bottle of Macallan 25-year-old single malt Scotch whiskey. I'm not a drinker, but even I knew this wasn't a casual gift. This was a bottle that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. The amber liquid caught the morning light streaming through my kitchen window, and for a moment, it looked almost like liquid gold. Beautiful, expensive, completely inappropriate. You see, Sarah knew I didn't drink. I'd mentioned it countless times at family gatherings. After my husband died, I'd developed what my doctor politely called stomach sensitivities. Alcohol of any kind made me violently ill. Sarah had been present for at least 3 conversations where this came up. She'd even commented once about how admirable it was that I could enjoy family celebrations without needing a drink to relax. So why send me whiskey? I stood there in my kitchen, holding this beautiful, expensive bottle, and felt that familiar prickle of unease I'd learned to associate with my daughter-in-law. Something wasn't right. But what? Was I being paranoid? Was this simply an expensive mistake? Maybe she'd meant to send it to someone else and mixed up the addresses. That's when I remembered that David's mother-in-law, Sarah's mother, Eleanor, lived just 2 streets over. Eleanor Wilson was a woman I'd met several times at family functions. Unlike her daughter, Eleanor was warm, genuine, and happened to be a connoisseur of fine spirits. She'd often mentioned her collection of rare whiskeys, inherited from her late father, who'd been something of an enthusiast. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Sarah had probably meant to send this gorgeous bottle to her own mother, and somehow gotten our addresses confused. It happened. People made mistakes, and Eleanor would absolutely appreciate a gift like this in a way I never could. I made the decision quickly, the way I'd learned to do in the 8 years since Harold died. When you live alone, you can't second-guess every choice, or you'll drive yourself mad with indecision. I rewrapped the bottle carefully, wrote a note explaining the mix-up, and drove the 2 streets over to Eleanor's house. Eleanor answered the door in her gardening clothes, soil still clinging to her fingertips, and a warm smile lighting up her face. She was the kind of woman who aged gracefully, silver hair always perfectly styled, laugh lines that spoke of a life well lived. "Margaret, what a lovely surprise. Come in, come in." I was just making tea. I followed her into her cozy living room, admiring as always the way she'd decorated with family photos and fresh flowers. Everything about Eleanor's home felt lived in and loved, the complete opposite of Sarah's sterile perfection. "I think there's been a mix-up," I said, holding out the rewrapped bottle. "This was delivered to my house this morning, but I'm quite sure Sarah meant it for you." Eleanor's eyes widened as she unwrapped the package. "Oh my goodness, Margaret. This is extraordinary. Macallan 25? I haven't seen a bottle of this in years." She held it up to the light, and I could see the appreciation in her eyes. This was clearly a woman who understood what she was looking at. "Sarah must have gotten our addresses mixed up," I continued. "I know how much you appreciate fine spirits. And, well, you know I can't drink anything stronger than chamomile tea these days." Eleanor set the bottle down gently on her coffee table and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Margaret, are you certain Sarah sent this?" The question caught me off guard. "Well, yes, there was a card, her handwriting. It said it was for the best mother-in-law ever." "May I see the card?" I handed it over, and Eleanor studied it carefully. Too carefully. The kind of attention you give to something when you're looking for clues rather than just reading words. "This is definitely Sarah's handwriting," she said finally. "But Margaret, I have to tell you something. Sarah doesn't give gifts like this. Not to anyone. Not even to David. She's always been very practical about money. Almost frugal, really. This bottle probably cost more than she spends on clothes in a year." Now, it was my turn to study Eleanor's face. "What are you saying?" "I'm not sure. It's just unusual. Very unusual for Sarah." She paused, turning the bottle slowly in her hands. "Margaret, has Sarah been acting differently lately? Around you, I mean." The question hit too close to home. Because yes, Sarah had been acting differently, more attentive, more interested in my daily routine. She'd started calling more often, asking about my health, my medications, my eating habits. At the time, I'd attributed it to her finally warming up to me, maybe realizing that being close to her mother-in-law might be worth the effort. "Now that you mention it," I said slowly, "she has been more involved lately, checking in on me more often." Eleanor nodded, and something passed across her face that looked almost like fear. Margaret, I think we should call Sarah. Right now. Together. Call her? Why? Because, Eleanor said, reaching for her phone, I want to hear her reaction when we tell her what happened to this bottle. The way she said it made my skin crawl. Like she was expecting something terrible. Something she knew didn't. Eleanor dialed Sarah's number on speakerphone. It rang twice before Sarah's crisp, professional voice answered. Hello, Mother. This is unexpected. Sarah, dear, I'm here with Margaret. We need to ask you about something. There was a pause, a beat too long to be natural. Margaret? What's this about? Eleanor looked at me and nodded. I cleared my throat. Sarah, I received a beautiful bottle of whiskey this morning. Macallan 25, with a lovely note from you. But since you know I can't drink, I assumed it was meant for Eleanor and brought it over to her. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear Sarah breathing on the other end of the line, but she wasn't speaking. The pause stretched so long that I began to wonder if the call had dropped. Finally, Sarah's voice came back, but it was different, sharper, almost frantic. You did what? Margaret, you gave the bottle to my mother? Well, yes. I thought surely you'd meant to send it to Eleanor. She's the one who appreciates fine whiskey. Oh my God. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now. Oh my God, Margaret. You don't understand. That bottle it wasn't supposed to. She stopped mid-sentence, and I could hear what sounded like crying, or maybe hyperventilating. Sarah. Eleanor's voice was sharp with concern. Sarah, what's wrong? What's wrong with the bottle? But the line went dead. Eleanor and I stared at each other across her coffee table. The expensive whiskey sitting between us like evidence of a crime we didn't yet understand. The silence in the room was thick, oppressive, broken only by the ticking of Eleanor's grandfather clock. Margaret, Eleanor said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, I don't think we should open this bottle. The way she said it made my blood turn to ice, because suddenly I was remembering all those little moments of unease I'd felt around Sarah. All those times my instincts had whispered that something was wrong, even when I couldn't name what it was. Margaret, Eleanor said quietly, setting the bottle down like it might explode. I think we need to call the police. The words hit me like a physical blow. Police. For a bottle of whiskey. But even as my rational mind tried to dismiss the idea, something deeper was screaming that Eleanor was right, that whatever we'd stumbled into was bigger and more dangerous than a simple gift mix-up. Surely you don't think, I began, but Eleanor held up her hand. I've been Sarah's mother for 28 years, she said, her voice steady despite the fear I could see in her eyes. And I'm telling you, Margaret, this isn't normal behavior. Not for her, not for anyone. She reached for her phone again, but before she could dial, it rang. Sarah's name flashed across the screen. Eleanor looked at me, took a deep breath, and answered. Sarah, Mother, listen to me very carefully. Sarah's voice was different now, cold, controlled. The frantic edge from before had been replaced by something that made my skin crawl. You and Margaret need to stay exactly where you are. Don't touch that bottle. Don't open it. Don't even move it. I'm coming over right now. Sarah, you're scaring me. What's going on? Just don't touch the bottle, Mother. Promise me. The line went dead again, and Eleanor and I sat in stunned silence. The grandfather clock ticked away the seconds, each one feeling heavier than the last. How long do you think it takes to get here from Sarah's house? I asked, my voice barely steady. 10 minutes, maybe 15 if there's traffic. I stared at the bottle sitting innocently on Eleanor's coffee table. The amber liquid seemed darker now, less like gold and more like something poisonous. Eleanor, what if we're overreacting? What if this is just some misunderstanding? But even as I said it, I was remembering more details. Sarah's increased interest in my health, her questions about my medications, the way she'd asked, just last week, about my daily routine, what time I ate breakfast, whether I ever had trouble sleeping, whether I took anything to help me rest. At the time, I'd thought she was finally taking an interest in my well-being. Now, those questions felt sinister. Eleanor was studying me carefully. Margaret, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. I nodded. Has Sarah ever given you anything else? Food, drinks, vitamins, anything at all? The question made my stomach lurch. She brought me homemade cookies last month, said she was trying out a new recipe, and she gave me some herbal tea a few weeks ago, said it would help with my sleep problems. Eleanor's face went pale. Did you eat the cookies? Drink the tea? I tried the cookies, but they tasted strange, almost bitter. I threw most of them away, and I never opened the tea. I'm not much for herbal remedies. Thank God, Eleanor whispered. We sat there, letting the implications sink in. The expensive whiskey wasn't a gift. It wasn't a mistake. It was something else entirely. Something that would have been meant for me to drink. Something that Sarah expected I would consume without question. Maybe to celebrate receiving such an expensive gift from my thoughtful daughter-in-law. But why? I asked, though part of me was afraid to hear the answer. Why would Sarah want to hurt me? Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her phone. Margaret, there are some things about Sarah's childhood that I never talked about. Things I thought she'd outgrown. Things I hoped she'd left behind. My heart started pounding. What kind of things? Sarah was always different from other children, not in obvious ways. She was bright, well-behaved, got excellent grades, but she had this need to control everything around her. And when she couldn't control something, or when something didn't go her way, Eleanor trailed off, staring at something I couldn't see. What would she do? Small things at first. A neighbor's cat that kept coming into our yard disappeared. Plants in our garden that belonged to varieties she didn't like would mysteriously die. When she was 16, her chemistry teacher gave her a B instead of an A on a project she thought deserved better. The teacher got violently ill the next day. Food poisoning, they said. The room felt like it was spinning. You think Sarah poisoned her teacher? I think Sarah has always believed that problems should be eliminated efficiently, and I think she's gotten very good at making it look like accidents. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us both jump. Through the window, I could see Sarah's pristine white sedan. She sat behind the wheel for a moment, talking on her phone, her face animated in a way I'd never seen before. Angry, desperate. She's here, Eleanor whispered. Sarah got out of the car and walked toward the house with quick, determined steps. She wasn't carrying anything, but something about her posture made me think of a predator approaching prey. When she knocked on the door, it wasn't the gentle tap of a concerned daughter. It was sharp, impatient. Eleanor looked at me. Whatever happens, don't let her near that bottle. She opened the door, and Sarah brushed past her without a greeting. Her eyes went immediately to the coffee table, scanning for the whiskey bottle. When she saw it sitting there, untouched, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Good, she said. You didn't open it. Sarah, Eleanor's voice was steady but wary. What's going on? Why are you acting like this? Sarah turned to look at both of us, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw her real face. Not the polite mask she wore at family dinners, or the charming smile she used with David. This was something colder, something calculating. "There's been a mistake," she said simply. "That bottle isn't safe to drink." "What do you mean, not safe?" I asked. Sarah's eyes flicked to me, and I saw something that made my blood freeze. Annoyance. Like I was a problem that needed to be solved. "It's contaminated," she said. "Bad batch. I just found out this morning. The distillery is recalling several bottles from that production run. Something went wrong in the aging process. It could make someone very sick." It was a smooth lie, delivered with the kind of confidence that comes from practice. But I caught the slight pause before she said, "contaminated," the way her eyes darted to the left when she mentioned the distillery. The tells that my late husband, a retired police detective, had taught me to watch for. Eleanor wasn't buying it either. "If it's contaminated, why didn't you call us immediately? Why did you react the way you did when Margaret said she'd given it to me?" "I panicked," Sarah said, but her voice was too controlled for someone who'd panicked. "I was afraid one of you might have already opened it." I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady. "Sarah, I need to ask you something directly." Her eyes snapped to mine. "What? Did you intend for me to drink that whiskey?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Sarah's face didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes. A calculation, like she was weighing her options. "Of course I did," she said finally. "That's why I sent it to you. As a gift. But you know I can't drink alcohol. You've known that for years." Another pause, another calculation. "I thought maybe you'd make an exception for something special. Or maybe you'd save it for a special occasion. Or give it to David." Each lie came easier than the last. But they were still lies. I could feel it in my bones. Eleanor stepped closer to her daughter. "Sarah, I think you need to leave." "Leave?" Sarah's composure cracked slightly. "Mother, I came here to help, to make sure you were safe." "Safe from what?" "From the daughter who brings poison gifts to her mother-in-law." The word hung in the air between us like a weapon. Poisoned. None of us had said it directly before, but there it was. Sarah's face went completely still. Not surprised, not outraged, just still. Like she was deciding how much truth to reveal. "That's a very serious accusation, Mother." "It's a very serious situation, Sarah." I watched this exchange with growing horror. This wasn't a family disagreement. This was something much darker, much more dangerous. Sarah looked at the bottle again, then at me. "Margaret, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "I don't think there has been," I said, surprised by the strength in my own voice. "I think you sent me something that would have hurt me very badly if I'd consumed it. And I think you're angry that your plan didn't work." The expression on Sarah's face when I said those words was something I'll never forget. It was like watching a mask slip off, revealing something underneath that I wasn't prepared to see. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. Her eyes narrowed, and for just a moment, I saw what Eleanor had been trying to warn me about. "Margaret," she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, "you have no idea what you're talking about." But I did. Deep down, I'd always known something was wrong. All those little moments over the past 3 years suddenly clicked into place like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was solving. The time Sarah insisted on making dinner for David and me, then spent an unusual amount of time in the kitchen alone. How I'd felt strangely dizzy afterward and attributed it to my medication. The herbal supplements she'd recommended for my arthritis, which I'd never taken because something about her insistence made me uncomfortable. The way she'd started asking detailed questions about my will, my insurance policies, my financial arrangements. I'd thought she was being responsible, thinking ahead for David's sake. Now I understood she'd been planning. "Sarah," Eleanor said, her voice shaking, Please tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me this isn't what I think it is. Sarah looked between us, and I could see her mind working, calculating, weighing her options like items on a scale. You want to know the truth, she said finally. Fine. The truth is that Margaret has been nothing but an obstacle from the day David and I got engaged. My heart stopped. An obstacle to what? To everything. To David's career advancement, to our financial security, to our future. She started pacing now, her carefully controlled facade crumbling. Do you have any idea how much money David sends you every month? How much of our future he's pouring into maintaining your lifestyle? Sarah, David chooses to help me. I never asked him for anything. You didn't have to ask. Her voice was rising now, the calm mask completely gone. You just had to exist, just had to be there with your medical bills and your house repairs and your sad widow routine. Poor Margaret, all alone, struggling to make ends meet. Eleanor stepped between us. Sarah, stop this. Right now. But Sarah was beyond stopping. Years of resentment were pouring out like poison from an infected wound. Do you know what David and I could have done with the money he's been giving you? We could have bought a house. A real house. Not the tiny apartment we're stuck in, because half his salary goes to supporting his mother. We could have started a family. We could have had a life. So, you decided to kill me? The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Sarah went very still. I decided to solve a problem. The casual way she said it made my legs give out. I sank back into Eleanor's chair, staring at this woman I thought I knew. This woman my son loved. This woman who just admitted to planning my murder with the same tone she might use to discuss grocery shopping. Eleanor was crying now, quiet tears streaming down her face. Sarah, how did you become this person? How did I raise someone who could even think these things? You raised me to be practical, Mother, to solve problems efficiently, to not let sentiment cloud my judgment. Sarah's voice was cold again, controlled. Margaret was a problem, an expensive problem that was getting more expensive every year. David loves me, I said weakly. He would never forgive you if something happened to me. David would grieve, Sarah said with a shrug. For a while. But people die, Margaret, especially elderly people with health problems. Heart attacks happen, strokes happen, and when they do, life insurance pays out. Wills get executed. Debts get settled. The calculation in her voice was terrifying. She'd thought this through completely. Not just the murder, but the aftermath. How to console her grieving husband. How to help him through his loss. How to manage the inheritance. You researched my medical conditions, I said, the pieces still falling into place. All those questions about my medications, my heart problems, my blood pressure. I researched everything, Sarah confirmed. Did you know that someone with your health profile has a significantly higher risk of adverse reactions to certain substances, especially when mixed with your current medications? A tragic accident waiting to happen, really. Eleanor was staring at her daughter like she was looking at a stranger. The cookies you made for Margaret, the tea, were those? Practice runs, Sarah said matter-of-factly. Small doses, just to see how she'd react, to calibrate the proper amount for the final solution. My stomach lurched. I thought about those bitter cookies I'd thrown away. The tea I'd never opened. How close I'd come without even knowing it. But this whiskey, I gestured toward the bottle. This was supposed to be the end. High-quality alcohol masks the taste of most additives. And, given your medical history, if you'd had a heart attack after drinking, even the autopsy would have shown natural causes complicated by alcohol consumption. Very sad, very believable. She'd thought of everything, every detail, every contingency, except one. You didn't count on me giving it away, I said. For the first time since her mask had slipped, Sarah looked genuinely frustrated. No, I didn't. I assumed your politeness would overcome your medical restrictions, that you'd feel obligated to at least try a gift that expensive, or that you'd save it for a special occasion and eventually work up the courage to have just a sip. And when that didn't work, you panicked. I adapted, Sarah corrected. When I realized you'd given it to Mother, I had to pivot quickly, come up with a story that would keep both of you safe while I figured out how to recover the bottle. Eleanor was shaking her head in disbelief. Safe? You were worried about keeping us safe? I was worried about collateral damage, Sarah said coldly. This was never about hurting innocent people. This was about solving one specific problem. The clinical way she talked about my death was almost worse than the death itself. I wasn't a person to her. I was a line item in a budget that needed to be eliminated. What happens now? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. Sarah looked at the bottle again, then at both of us. Now we have a problem. You both know too much. The threat was implicit, but clear. Eleanor and I had become obstacles too. Sarah, Eleanor said, her voice pleading, you're my daughter. I love you. But I can't let you hurt Margaret. And I can't pretend this conversation never happened. I know, Mother. I'm sorry about that. She reached into her purse, and both Eleanor and I tensed. But instead of a weapon, she pulled out her phone. David, she said when someone answered. Hi, honey. I'm at Mother's house with Margaret. There's been a terrible accident. My blood turned to ice. She was calling my son, setting up her next lie while we sat there listening. Margaret opened a bottle of contaminated whiskey. She's very sick. We're about to call an ambulance. Eleanor grabbed for the phone, but Sarah stepped away. Yes, it's very serious. She's having trouble breathing, heart palpitations. I think she might be having a reaction to something in the alcohol. I could hear David's voice through the phone, frantic with worry. My son, terrified that he was about to lose his mother, being manipulated by the woman he loved into believing a lie that would cover up her attempt to murder me. Sarah, hang up the phone, Eleanor said firmly. But Sarah was already ending the call. He's on his way. He'll be here in 20 minutes. What's your plan? I asked. David arrives and finds what, exactly? He finds his mother collapsed from drinking contaminated whiskey. 2 witnesses who can confirm she opened the bottle despite our warnings. A tragic accident that could have been prevented if only she'd listened. She was going to kill me right here, right now, with my son on his way to witness the aftermath. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. You'll have to kill Eleanor too, I said quietly. She knows the truth. Sarah's eyes flicked to her mother. Not necessarily. Mother might be in shock from witnessing your collapse, confused, saying things that don't make sense because she's traumatized. I won't let you do this, Eleanor said, stepping toward the phone. I'm calling the police right now. Mother, if you call the police, you'll be accusing your own daughter of attempted murder. Are you really prepared to do that? To destroy your family? To send me to prison? The manipulation was expert. Sarah knew exactly which buttons to press, which fears to exploit. She was counting on Eleanor's love for her, her instinct to protect her child, to override her moral obligation to protect me. Eleanor hesitated, her hand hovering over her phone. Sarah, please, just take the bottle and leave. We'll never mention this to anyone. You can tell David it was all a misunderstanding. It's too late for that, Mother. David is already on his way. The story has already been set in motion. We have to see it through now. She moved toward the coffee table where the whiskey bottle sat, not to take it away, but to open it. What are you doing? I asked. Creating evidence, she said, breaking the seal on the bottle. When David gets here, he needs to see that you drank from this, that you're suffering the consequences of not listening to our warnings about contamination. The amber liquid caught the light as she poured it into one of Eleanor's crystal glasses. The smell filled the room, rich and smoky. Under different circumstances, it might have been pleasant. Drink it, Margaret. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I won't, I said. Then I'll help you, Sarah replied, moving toward me with the glass. That's when Eleanor finally found her courage. No, she said, stepping between us. Sarah, I won't let you do this. I can't. Mother and daughter faced each other across the living room, the poisoned whiskey between them, like a line drawn in the sand. Eleanor was shaking, but her voice was steady. I'm calling the police now, she said, reaching for her phone. Sarah lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, and Eleanor stumbled backward. The phone flew across the room, sliding under the couch. In the struggle, Sarah's elbow knocked into the coffee table. The whiskey glass tipped over, spilling its contents across Eleanor's antique wooden surface. The liquid spread quickly, soaking into the wood, filling the room with the smell of expensive scotch. And something else. Something underneath the whiskey scent that made my nose wrinkle. Something chemical, bitter. Sarah stared at the spilled liquid, her face a mask of fury and frustration. Look what you've done. But Eleanor was already moving, crawling toward the couch to retrieve her phone. Sarah grabbed her arm, trying to stop her, and they struggled on the floor like children fighting over a toy. Except this wasn't a game. This was life and death. I knew I had to do something, but my legs felt like water. The shock of everything I'd learned, everything I'd heard, had left me weak and shaking. Still, I forced myself to stand. The whiskey bottle was still on the table, most of its contents intact. Evidence, proof of what Sarah had tried to do. I grabbed it, holding it against my chest like a shield. Sarah, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. It's over. She looked up from where she was wrestling with her mother, her hair disheveled, her perfect composure completely destroyed. Give me that bottle, Margaret. No, give it to me, or I'll hurt her. She tightened her grip on Eleanor's arm, and Eleanor cried out in pain. That's when we heard David's car in the driveway. Sarah's head snapped toward the window at the sound of David's car door slamming. For just a moment, her grip on Eleanor loosened, and Eleanor pulled free, scrambling toward the couch where her phone had landed. David's here, Sarah said, her voice suddenly calm again. The transformation was terrifying to watch. In seconds, she smoothed her hair, straightened her clothes, and composed her face into an expression of concerned distress. Remember, Margaret collapsed after drinking the contaminated whiskey. Mother is in shock from witnessing it. I'm not playing along with this, I said, clutching the bottle tighter. Then you'll be responsible for destroying David's life. Sarah replied, coldly. He'll never recover from learning that his wife tried to murder his mother. Is that really what you want for your son? The front door burst open before I could answer. David rushed in, his face pale with panic, still wearing his work clothes, with his tie askew. Mom, are you okay? His eyes swept the room, taking in Eleanor on the floor by the couch, me standing with the whiskey bottle, Sarah looking perfectly composed despite everything that had just happened. Oh, David, thank God you're here, Sarah said, moving toward him with practiced concern. Your mother drank some of the whiskey before we could stop her. She's been having chest pains and difficulty breathing. David's eyes locked onto mine, searching my face for signs of distress. Mom, How do you feel? Should we call an ambulance? This was the moment, the crossroads, where I had to choose between protecting my son from a horrible truth or protecting myself from a woman who just tried to kill me. David, I said carefully, sit down. There are some things you need to know. She's confused, Sarah interjected smoothly. The contamination affects cognitive function. She's not thinking clearly. But David knew me too well. He could see that my eyes were clear, my voice steady. Mom, what's going on? Really? Eleanor had found her phone and was pulling herself up from behind the couch. David, your wife just tried to poison your mother. The words hit David like a physical blow. He actually stumbled backward, looking between the three of us, like he'd walked into the wrong house, the wrong life. What? That's insane. Sarah would never. He trailed off, seeing something in our faces that made his certainty waver. Sarah moved closer to him, her hand reaching for his arm. David, they're both in shock. This has been very traumatic for everyone. The important thing is that we get your mother to a hospital. I don't need a hospital, I said firmly. I need the police. The police? David's voice cracked. Mom, what are you talking about? I held up the whiskey bottle. This isn't contaminated, David. It's poisoned. Sarah sent it to me knowing I would drink it, knowing it would kill me. That's ridiculous, Sarah said, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. David, you know I would never hurt your mother. I love her. No, you don't, I said quietly. You see me as an obstacle, an expensive problem that needs to be eliminated, so you and David can have the life you want. David was shaking his head, backing away from all of us. This isn't happening. This can't be happening. She admitted it, David, Eleanor said, her voice breaking. She told us everything. How she's been planning this for months. How she tested smaller doses first. How she researched Margaret's medical conditions to make it look like natural causes. Stop, David said, his hands pressed to his temples. Just stop. Sarah, tell them this is all some horrible misunderstanding. Sarah looked at her husband, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been genuine emotion cross her face. Love, maybe, or regret, but it passed quickly, replaced by calculation. David, I did this for us, she said quietly, for our future, for the life we deserve to have. The admission hung in the air, like smoke. David stared at his wife, his face cycling through disbelief, horror, and something that looked like grief. You actually tried to kill my mother? I tried to solve our problem, Sarah replied, her voice matter-of-fact again. Your mother has been bleeding us dry for years, David. The money you send her every month, the constant emergencies, the medical bills we end up covering. We can't build a life together when half our resources are going to support someone who should be in assisted living anyway. She's my mother, David whispered. She's a burden, Sarah snapped, her composure finally cracking completely. An expensive burden that you're too sentimental to do anything about. So I did something about it. David sank into Eleanor's armchair, his head in his hands. This isn't real. This can't be real. I moved toward my son, still holding the bottle. David, I know this is horrible. I know it's not what you want to hear about the woman you love, but it's the truth. He looked up at me, his eyes red with unshed tears. How long have you known? I suspected something was wrong for months. The way she started asking about my health, my medications, my daily routine. But I didn't understand what it meant until today. The cookies, David said suddenly. You said they tasted strange. In the tea she gave you. Practice runs, I confirmed. She told us herself. Small doses to test my reactions. David turned to look at Sarah, who was standing by the window now, staring out at the street like she was calculating escape routes. "Sarah," he said, his voice barely audible, "please tell me there's some explanation. Some reason that makes this not as bad as it sounds." She turned back to us, and the woman looking at David wasn't the charming, polite daughter-in-law I'd known for 3 years. This was someone harder, colder, more calculating. "The reason is that I love you," she said. "More than you love yourself, apparently. You're so busy taking care of everyone else that you can't see what it's costing us, what it's costing our future. So, you decided to murder my mother. I decided to free us from an obligation that was destroying our marriage." The casual way she said it made David flinch. "Our marriage isn't being destroyed by my mother, Sarah. It's being destroyed by you. Don't be naive, David. Your mother has been manipulating you for years, playing the helpless widow who can't manage without her big, strong son. Do you think it's a coincidence that every time we start to get ahead financially, she has some new emergency that requires your help? She's not manipulating anyone," David said, standing up. "She's struggling to live on a fixed income in a house that's falling apart. I help her because I love her and because it's the right thing to do." "The right thing to do," Sarah repeated, mockingly. "And what about your wife, David? What about doing the right thing for me?" "The right thing for you doesn't involve poisoning people." Eleanor had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. "Sarah, I think you need to leave, right now." "I'm not going anywhere, Mother. David and I need to work this out." "There's nothing to work out," David said, his voice growing stronger. "You tried to kill my mother, Sarah. You planned it. You researched it. You executed it. The only reason she's not dead right now is because she gave the bottle to Eleanor instead of drinking it herself." Sarah's mask slipped again, revealing the fury underneath. "Fine. You want the truth? The complete truth? Your mother is going to die anyway, David. She's 68 years old, with heart problems and high blood pressure. She's got maybe 10 years left, if she's lucky. 10 years of increasing medical bills, increasing neediness, increasing demands on your time and money. I just wanted to accelerate the timeline." The silence that followed was deafening. David stared at his wife like she was a stranger who'd wandered into his life wearing Sarah's face. "Get out," he said quietly. "David, be reasonable. We can work through this." "Get out!" The force of his voice made all of us jump. "Get out of this house. Get out of my life. I never want to see you again." Sarah's face went completely white. "You don't mean that." "I've never meant anything more in my life." She looked around the room, at David's furious face, at Eleanor's tears, at me holding the evidence of her crime. For the first time since I'd known her, Sarah looked genuinely lost. "If I leave now," she said slowly, "I'm not coming back." "Good," David replied. Sarah stood there for another moment, as if waiting for someone to change their mind, to realize this was all a terrible mistake. When no one spoke, she picked up her purse and walked toward the door. "You'll regret this, David," she said, without turning around. "When the bills start piling up again, when she needs more and more care, when you're working 2 jobs to keep her in that house, you'll remember that I tried to give us a better life." The door closed behind her with a soft click, and suddenly, Eleanor's living room felt enormous and empty. David collapsed back into the chair, his whole body shaking. "I married a monster." "You married someone who was very good at hiding what she really was," I said gently. "That's not your fault, isn't it? How could I not see this? How could I live with someone for 3 years and not know they were capable of murder. Eleanor sat down beside him, putting a motherly hand on his shoulder. Because people like Sarah are experts at deception, David. They show you exactly what you want to see until they don't need to anymore. I set the whiskey bottle down on the table, my hands finally steady. The important thing is that we're all safe now, and we have evidence of what she tried to do. David looked at the bottle, then at me. Mom, we have to call the police. What she did, it's attempted murder. She can't just walk away from this. I know, I said. But David, are you prepared for what that means? The investigation, the trial, the media attention. Your wife going to prison. She's not my wife anymore, David said firmly. She stopped being my wife the moment she decided to poison you. Eleanor was already reaching for her phone. I'll call them. As she dialed, David came over to me and wrapped me in a hug that felt like he was trying to hold all the pieces of our family together. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I brought her into our lives. I'm sorry I didn't see what she was. You couldn't have known, I said, holding my son, while Eleanor spoke to the police dispatcher in the background. But even as I comforted David, my mind was racing. Sarah was out there somewhere, probably driving back to the apartment she shared with my son. What would she do now? How would she react to having her carefully laid plans destroyed? People like Sarah didn't just give up. They adapted. They found new ways to solve their problems. And we had just become a much bigger problem than she'd ever anticipated. The police arrived within 20 minutes. 2 officers who looked young enough to be my grandchildren, but carried themselves with the kind of quiet authority that comes from seeing too much of what people can do to each other. Officer Martinez took our statements, while Officer Chen photographed the whiskey bottle, the spilled liquid on Eleanor's coffee table, and the note Sarah had written. David sat beside me on Eleanor's couch, his hand gripping mine like he was afraid I might disappear if he let go. Every few minutes, he'd shake his head and mutter something about how he should have known, how he should have seen the signs. I kept telling him it wasn't his fault, but I could see the guilt eating at him from the inside out. Mrs. Wilson, Officer Martinez said to me, can you walk us through exactly what happened when your daughter-in-law arrived this afternoon? I told them everything. The panic in Sarah's voice when she learned I'd given the bottle to Eleanor. Her admission about the practice runs with cookies and tea. The clinical way she'd described her plan to kill me and make it look like natural causes. Her complete lack of remorse when confronted with what she'd done. Eleanor corroborated every detail, her voice steady, despite the tears that kept flowing down her cheeks. When Martinez asked if she had any idea where Sarah might have gone, she just shook her head. She has credit cards, cash, probably some money saved that David doesn't know about. Eleanor said, Sarah's always been very secretive about her finances. She could be anywhere by now. Officer Chen sealed the whiskey bottle in an evidence bag, handling it with the kind of care you'd use for a loaded weapon. We'll need to get this to the lab for analysis, he said. Depending on what they find, we'll be looking at charges ranging from attempted poisoning to attempted murder in the first degree. The words hit David like physical blows. Attempted murder in the first degree. His wife, the woman he'd planned to start a family with. How long before you find her? David asked. Hard to say, Martinez replied. We've put out a BOLO alert on her vehicle. If she's still in the area, we'll pick her up soon. But if she had an escape plan, he trailed off, leaving the implications hanging in the air. Of course, she had an escape plan. Sarah struck me as the type of person who always had contingencies, multiple exit strategies. She'd probably been preparing for the possibility that her murder plot might go wrong from the moment she conceived it. After the police left, the three of us sat in Eleanor's living room, the silence heavy with everything we'd learned and everything we'd lost. The coffee table still smelled faintly of spilled whiskey, a reminder of how close I'd come to drinking poison, meant specifically for me. "I keep thinking about our wedding day," David said suddenly. "How happy she looked. How perfect everything seemed. Was any of it real?" Eleanor reached over and squeezed his hand. "The happiness was real for you, David. That's what matters. Sarah may have been performing, but your feelings were genuine. How do I trust anyone again after this?" he asked. "How do I look at another woman and not wonder what she's really thinking, what she's really planning?" I didn't have an answer for that. How do you rebuild your faith in people after discovering that someone you loved was capable of calculating your mother's death like a business transaction? My phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. "This isn't over, Margaret. You've cost me everything, and I don't forget debts like that." The blood drained from my face. David saw my expression and grabbed the phone from my hands. "She's threatening you," he said, his voice tight with renewed anger. "Even now, after everything, she's still threatening you." Eleanor looked at the message and immediately picked up her landline. "I'm calling the police back." While she spoke to the dispatcher, David forwarded the text to his own phone. "I'm going to make sure every law enforcement agency in the state has this. She's not going to hurt you, Mom. I won't let her." But even as he said it, I could see the fear in his eyes. Sarah had already proven she was willing to kill for what she wanted. What would she do now that she'd lost everything? Now that her carefully constructed life had fallen apart in the span of a single afternoon? That was 6 months ago. Sarah was arrested 3 days later, trying to board a flight to Costa Rica with a fake passport and $50,000 in cash. The lab confirmed the whiskey contained enough oleander extract to kill a horse, let alone a 68-year-old woman with heart problems. She's currently serving 25 to life for attempted murder. David's doing better now, though he still jumps every time someone knocks on the door unexpectedly. Eleanor and I have grown closer through all this, bonding over the strange reality of sharing a daughter-in-law who tried to murder me. And me, well, I trust my instincts now in ways I never did before. Sometimes that little voice in your head isn't paranoia. Sometimes it's the only thing standing between you and a beautiful bottle of poison disguised as a gift.